Hi golfers, Rob Cheney here from GOLFTEC Singapore. Welcome to another video. Today's video is going to discuss the setup. So what are some of the things you can do at setup to improve your chances of success and building in that consistency that everyone desires? And also we're going to discuss some of the differences, the key differences at setup between the iron and the driver.
Swing. That was a good swing.
Okay, so let's get into this straight away. I've hit two shots, one with an iron, one with a driver. Today we're going to just specifically talk about the setup. So there's no swing conversation here at all, but this is to help you understand and identify some of those things you can be doing with all your clubs that should be common across at setup across all the different clubs, and then some of the differences that do occur through the bag, particularly through a standard iron shot and setup and that of the driver. So if we take a look at the screen here, we'll go with the face-on view first of all. So if we take a look from the face-on view, we're going to start from the ground up, taking a look. I guess first of all, the most obvious difference there is the ball position. And as I've discussed in previous videos, the way you measure ball position really is from its relationship to the left shoulder. So if I draw a line down from my left shoulder with my iron and a line down from the left shoulder of my driver, you'll notice how the ball position with the driver is directly underneath the left shoulder. That is how I would prescribe you to set up for driver for a standard shot. That effectively puts it right at the bottom of the arc of the swing, underneath that center of the swing. Helps you to hit the ball with a relatively flat or zero angle of attack based on that setup. Whereas you'll notice with the iron, you've got the ball positioned behind the center. So there's an angle here created with the left arm, the shaft, down to the ball. That's a good thing for an iron because setting up like that helps you to hit down on the golf ball, which is the fundamental difference really between an iron swing and a driver swing. So that's a key difference in setup. You may look at those videos and say, well, it's different. You could use your feet as a reference for how to measure ball position. I know a lot of people do. The ball position being placed somewhere off the left heel or the left instep there of that foot, whereas the ball position on the iron swing is somewhat more central. Moving up, some things to very much point out as a commonality here would be my foot flare, something I encourage a lot of my students to do. It really helps with how you turn on both the backswing and the follow through. Turning the feet out also positions the knees turned out slightly. And then in terms of the width of the stance, I like to see as a guide the heel of each leg with an iron, the heel positioned underneath the hip socket more or less. So your heels are about hip width apart. Your toes, because they're turned out, are wider than that. So with the driver, you're going to have a slightly wider stance. That's one of the differences. The right foot is going to pull back slightly more. So I've got my right foot a little bit further back here, which creates a more wider base for me to start from. And it also helps me to create a little bit more tilt at setup, which I'll get into in just a minute. Next is the grip. The grip should be a commonality really across all your clubs, especially full swing clubs. I've spoken about different grips in the past for short game shots and some bunker shots and some speciality shots, but I think having a good, strong, fundamental grip is key to good golf. You don't see many poor grips demonstrated by good players. I've covered the grip in more detail in other videos, and I'd encourage you to go and watch that video if you're not familiar with how to do the grip properly. Final piece really from this face-on angle that I want to kind of point out is the difference in the tilt of the spine. If I took the point at the top of my shirt here and the shirt button and then my belt buckle, that angle there with the driver is a little bit more pronounced than it is with the iron. So there's a little bit more tilt there. That's also backed up by the motion measurement numbers here at GOLFTEC. We're seeing a little bit more right tilt with my setup with the driver, and I would encourage that. I think that's important. It helps to create a little bit more of a shallowing mechanism for the angle of attack. It means you don't hit down as much. And I build that in my setup by having my hips a bit more forward with my driver. So I'm pushing my hips a little bit more forward in this direction to create a little bit more spine tilt, quite important to distinguish between that and just leaning back more with your upper body to create this tilt. I think a lot of people do understand that the driver setup is a little bit different, and they know they should hit up on the ball more than they should with an iron, and they sometimes get this incorrect by leaning back with their shoulders, create more tilt, move their upper center back too far. They move it back in this direction, they start to tilt too far behind the ball, and then they have problems with contact. So there is more shoulder tilt at setup with the driver, but just be careful about how you produce that. Just on that point one more time to finish with, on this face-on view, if I draw some lines up from my ankles, both on the front foot and the trail foot, with both the driver and the iron, you're going to notice, or I'm going to certainly help you to notice, how the hips are more forward, or are positioned forward as in towards the target on both of those, meaning that the hips are to the left in my case. And then the second thing I want you to notice is how the distance or the gap there created on the right hand side in the driver swing is greater than the gap on the left hand side with the irons. That just reaffirms what I said a minute ago, is the hips are more forward with the driver swing or with the driver setup. The feet are a little bit wider and the hips are positioned a little bit more to the left at setup. Okay, we move to down the line view now, and let's take a look at some of the similarities and also the differences here. Again, starting from the ground up, I think probably the most obvious thing at setup, for me at least, with my driver, and it's something that I spoke about in my aim video last time around, was how my knee stance line is aimed slightly more to the right than with my irons. And I discussed that in the aim video about how it helps me to swing a little bit more into out, which encourages me to hit that draw shot, which I typically do. So that's something that I build into my setup. I'm not suggesting it's a necessity for everyone to do that, but if you were trying to draw the driver more than your irons and you wanted to encourage that, it's certainly something that you could do. Next thing to point out really would be the distance from the ball. This is a question I get a lot: how far from the ball should I stand? It's a difficult question to put an exact answer on. I do have some things that I like to look for, and I'll share those with you now. I actually don't really conform to these because of my height. I'm quite tall, and I end up, because my long torso, I end up bending over or bending forward more than maybe most would do. But as a decent checkpoint, if you take a look at the back of the arm or the armpit, draw a line down, you'd want it to sort of hit the knees and then go through the balls of the feet. So as I do that, if I really catch the back of my shirt seam there and I go down in a straight line, you'll see how I tend to lean more forward than maybe I would prescribe as a standard. But if you want to check your posture and you're looking for a good place to start, the back of the shirt seam with the arm there, the front of the knees and through the balls of the feet would be a really good checkpoint for the irons. Driver similar. You'll see that because the driver's longer, I'm able to stand up a little bit taller, which would be a little bit more standard for most people of average height, but it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. So when you ask the question, how far from the ball should you stand, the real answer is that it depends. Depends on your body makeup, your size, depends on the clubs you're using or the club you're using, and whether or not that's a longer club or a shorter club, and whether or not the clubs are fitted to you. But as a guide, use that one where it goes from the back of the shirt seam, front of the kneecap, through the ball of the feet. And the next thing on distance from the ball is really the arm hang. So with an iron or a wedge club, you'd notice how my arms tend to hang more vertically straight down from my shoulder sockets. And with the driver, as I'm stood up slightly more, the hands will tend to be a little bit further from my body. That's also noticeable when you just look at the distance from my hands to my legs here. There's a greater distance created with the driver. That's something that you should be looking to do as well. And then really the last thing to mention is the posture, the amount I bend forward. You'll notice here that this is not a straight line. My back is not vertical or particularly straight. It's got a rounded top to it, which I would encourage. This helps me to have more of my neck tilted forward more, and for me to look more down at the golf ball, to have my head bent forward, and for me to look down at the golf ball more out of my central vision. Similarly with the driver, looking down at the ball and with the rounded top to my back. That's not always understood fully and sometimes frowned upon. A lot of times people are trying to keep their back too straight. They look at their posture and they think they have rounded shoulders. I would tell you that's probably a good thing. It helps to get your shoulders, if they're slightly protracted forwards, it helps to get your arms a little bit more on top of your chest, which is a good place to start from. And if you really look historically at golfers down the years, they don't have this rigid spine or this straight back that's so often prescribed in mainstream golf instruction. So there you go, guys. There's a little bit of a checkup on setup, making sure you're covering the basic points and can recognize the differences between the iron swing setup and the driver swing. If you have any questions on that video, please do post your questions in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear from you if you found that useful, and if you have any other ways that you differentiate between driver and iron setup. As with so many of my videos, the theme and the content is based around the questions I hear, and so often in the stack and tilt system, the question around the differences between the iron and the driver comes up so often. So to be able to clarify these setup differences for you, I hope was useful. If you didn't already catch the latest stack and tilt show that I did with my good friend and colleague here at GOLFTEC Singapore, Nick Taylor, over on his YouTube channel this week, we sat in the bay, we chatted with everyone live for an hour, hit some shots, and discussed all things golf swing and all things stack and tilt. I've recently posted that onto my channel. If you haven't seen that already, please do go and check it out. I'll also place the link in the description box below. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do go ahead and click that subscribe button. If you'd like to see the video next time around, focus on the difference between the iron and the driver swing, please let me know in the comment section. If I get enough requests for that video, I'll be more than happy to shoot that one for you. Until next time, guys, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you again very soon for another video.